Welcome to this explainer. Look, you already know the cybersecurity landscape is an absolute beast. It's complex, it's packed with jargon, and it is constantly shifting under our feet. But today, we're cutting right through all that noise to map out the real territory. We're going to break down exactly how the moving parts of threats, defenses, and governance actually fit together in the real world.
Let's kick things off with the ultimate catch-22 of modern life. Connection creates convenience, but convenience creates exposure. Think about it. A hospital digitizing its records makes patient care so much faster, but it also creates a massive target holding highly sensitive data. Or a factory connecting its machinery to the internet. You get a huge boost in efficiency, sure, but you also just opened a brand new door for remote interference. This tension right here perfectly illustrates why the world is so desperate for cybersecurity professionals. The entire field is essentially built on trying to catch up with all of this new exposure.
So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to hit the foundations of cybersecurity, dive into how attacks actually happen, take a look inside the Security Operations Center, break down governance, risk, and compliance, and finally map out your cybersecurity career path. All right, jumping into Section 1, Foundations of Cybersecurity. Let's get our basic vocabulary dialed in. Basically, almost everything we do in this field traces back to what we call the CIA triad. We're talking about confidentiality, which is just keeping data hidden from the wrong people, integrity, making sure that data stays accurate and completely unaltered, and availability, ensuring the system is actually accessible when authorized people need it. And the thing is, different organizations weigh these very differently. A bank, for instance, cares enormously about integrity, but a hospital monitoring system, they're going to prioritize availability above almost everything else, because downtime there has immediate real-world consequences.
Let's knock out some rapid-fire definitions, starting with an asset. Now, you might immediately think of a server or a company laptop, right? But it's way broader than that. An asset can be a piece of custom software, a major customer relationship, a company's reputation, or even an employee's specialized knowledge. Simply put, if losing it would hurt the organization, it's an asset.
Next up, we have vulnerabilities. A lot of folks hear weakness and instantly picture some incredibly complex software bug. And yes, it could totally be bad code. But honestly, it could just as easily be a server sitting there with a default admin password or an employee who just hasn't been trained to spot a fake phishing email.
A threat is whatever is actually trying to exploit that vulnerability. And we really need to ditch the movie stereotype of the hacker in a dark hoodie here. A threat could be a piece of self-replicating malware, a disgruntled former employee, or even a completely non-human force, like an earthquake completely taking out your primary data center. The common thread? It's all about the potential for harm.
So what ties all this together? Risk. Since you can't just magically wish away earthquakes or determine cybercriminals, cybersecurity is literally just the practice of getting risk down to a level you can actually live with. You have to assess which weaknesses pose the greatest realistic danger and focus your limited budget and resources right there.
Moving on to Section 2, how attacks actually happen. It's time to understand the enemy camp. Before we even think about how to defend a network, we have to ask, how do these breaches actually go down in the real world? Again, forget the Hollywood trope of someone typing furiously for 30 seconds to bypass a mainframe. We need to look at the highly structured, almost business-like reality of modern cyber attacks. Enter the cyber kill chain. This is a widely used framework that breaks down the stages of a deliberate attack. It starts with attackers gathering info during reconnaissance. Then, they build their tool and send it over in weaponization and delivery. Next, they trigger it during exploitation and installation, gain persistent remote access through command and control, and finally they steal or destroy the data in actions on objectives. For defenders, knowing this framework is absolutely invaluable for stage spotting. If you can catch an attacker early, say you spot a sketchy email during the delivery phase, you can shut the whole thing down before they ever get close to their actual target. When we look at the actual malicious tools, the malware, used in these attacks, we see viruses and worms that spread rapidly and Trojans that sneak in disguised as totally harmless files. But the absolute heavyweight right now? Ransomware. It encrypts your files and demands cryptocurrency to unlock them. And the wild part is, ransomware has evolved into this massive damaging service model today, where the original authors literally lease their malicious code out to other criminals for a cut of the profits. It's an entire underground economy. All right, Section 3, inside the Security Operations Center. Let's check out the castle walls. In this industry, we basically split into two main camps. You've got the blue team doing the daily grind, the continuous, protective work of monitoring systems and actively responding to incidents. On the flip side, you have the red team. They do periodic, highly skilled simulated hacking to find weaknesses before the real bad guys do. And just to be absolutely clear here, red team work is always done with explicit, documented authorization. No rogue hacking allowed.
Which brings us to a really cool modern evolution, purple teaming. This is where defenders and attackers actually collaborate in real time. Instead of the red team dropping some massive 200-page report on the blue team's desk at the end of a month-long engagement, they share information instantly. It creates this incredibly fast feedback loop for fixing vulnerabilities on the fly.
Inside the Security Operations Center, the SOC, analysts are basically drowning in logs. Literally every single action on a computer generates a log, which creates an overwhelming mountain of raw data. To actually handle this, analysts rely on a CM platform. A CM centralizes and searches everything, combing through millions of routine logs to spot malicious patterns. It minimizes those annoying false positives while catching true threats. Essentially, it turns the totally impossible manual task into actionable alerts.
On to Section 4, Governance, Risk and Compliance. This is the rulebook.
Technical tools are really only half the battle. When businesses are figuring out where to drop their limited security budget, they have to analyze risk, and they usually blend two approaches to do it. Quantitative analysis is all about the hard numbers, calculating the exact expected dollar cost of a risk over a year to see if buying a new security tool is actually worth the price tag. Qualitative analysis, though, relies on human judgment. You're using high, medium, or low scales for things that are just super hard to put a price on, like a massive loss of customer trust.
Now, when we're talking absolute worst-case scenarios, like a major breach or a natural disaster, organizations rely on some very specific time-based metrics. Maximum tolerable downtime is literally the longest you can survive being offline before the business goes under. Recovery time objective is your target clock for getting back up and running. And recovery point objective, that's how much data you can afford to lose based on when your last backup happened. But listen, no matter what these technical metrics say, they always follow one golden rule. Protecting human safety outranks protecting any IT system. Period.
Finally, Section 5, your cybersecurity career path. Let's get you on the map.
Here's the really good news. You totally do not need a computer science degree to pivot into the space. Roles like a Tier 1 SOC analyst doing that initial alert triage, or a GRC analyst working with policies and risk frameworks offer fantastic hands-on entry points. Even starting out in general IT support or systems administration builds a perfect foundation, because honestly, you need to learn how normal systems work before you can possibly learn how to secure them.
If you want to make yourself genuinely job-ready, you have to bridge that gap between reading about this stuff and actually doing it. You can do this by pairing some solid foundational certifications with real hands-on practice. Go build a simple home lab with virtual machines so you can safely practice these skills. And maybe most importantly, make reading up on active threats and daily security news a regular habit.
Which brings us to this incredibly powerful truth about the industry. In cybersecurity, standing still means you are quietly falling behind. The tools are always changing, and the threats are constantly evolving. This field is absolutely desperate for curious minds who are willing to put in the practice and just keep learning. So now that you have the map to this incredible territory, what's your next move going to be? Thanks so much for hanging out with me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.